Welcome back, everybody, to another TIMBP Live on this Thursday evening, the 28th of January, 2021. I am so happy to be hanging out with you all tonight. If you're watching on the replay, thank you so much for checking us out. Of course, I'm very excited to be welcoming in Kenny Coleman here in just a minute, but a couple of things up top. Of course, I want to say hello to our Blue Wrench crew, and it looks like it is just Donnie the Linux Cat in here at the moment. But Don Nishida all the way in Hawaii, Jason from the Mash and Drum, hello, good to see you. Sugar Kitty, don't know Sugar Kitty, that's a new one. So maybe that's a Kenny crossover. Chris all the way in Australia, James Taylor, hello, James. Emily Chambers, lots of good folks in here tonight. If you have not yet, please go ahead, subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, hit the bell notification, of course, so you know when we go live, when new episodes of the podcast drop on YouTube. Hope everybody is having a good night. I'm very, very excited to be welcoming on somebody whom I'll go ahead and give him a little bit of kudos before I bring him on. But his show, of course, was a major inspiration before I started my own podcast. And I firmly, firmly believe that without Bourbon Pursuit, This Is My Bourbon podcast would not actually exist. And I am so happy, finally, after over 3 years of the show being on and countless times when we were saying, hey, we've got to do something together. And finally, this seemed like the appropriate time. Please welcome all the way from the far off distant city of Louisville, Kentucky, here from Lexington, of course, Kenny Coleman from Bourbon Pursuit. Kenny, welcome to the show, buddy. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Perry. I mean, that was quite the intro, and we were only an hour apart, but it
I do nothing else if not wax poetic. So
hey, it sounds good, and it sounds like it gets the people jacked, so that's all that matters.
Absolutely, man. So how are you doing? We haven't talked in a good while, honestly, probably since before the pandemic.
Yeah, things have been pretty good. Things have well, I mean, this week has been absolute chaos with stock markets and everything like that. But, for the time being, everything has been pretty good. I think that most everybody has kind of like found their groove. Everybody, you have like your safe space, I guess you will. You've got your like small little group of friends. You're like, okay, like I feel safe doing this. Where at the very beginning, everybody's like, I don't trust you. I don't trust you. But now everybody's like starting to branch out just little by little. People are at Home Depot every weekend now, so you see a little more comfort factor rolling into it. And yeah, I mean,
to bounce off that, like even within the creative space, so much of what I was doing in 2020 was like trying to play things really close to the vest, right? Just really trying to make sure that I was attentive to the content that I was putting out in terms of representing myself well, right? And then as soon I hate to say, once the calendar rolled over and we got into 2021, it was like, oh, it did like kind of a soft reset where it was like, maybe we can branch out a little bit. Maybe we can actually get some more people, into this space as well. But I very much feel that not just in the small space that is podcast creation, but in the community as well. So
absolutely. And the podcast, it's actually very hard. I don't know if people realize like what this has done to our business and everything that we typically do, at least for us on our side. Like we just wrapped up a recording week about two or 3 weeks ago. And we don't like to do a ton of stuff online because there's this huge gap and huge barrier of that people that, let's be honest, we're talking to a bourbon centric, we're trying to people that into bourbon on it. And we're not talking people that are like really that know the tech space. And so we're like, oh yeah, you want to connect your mic, you can connect here, go ahead, access your webcam, let Chrome do it. You got to use Chrome. And they're like, oh, and like their minds are blown. So that's why it's like, we always love to do things in person. We've had a few in person just from people that are, a little more comfortable. Like we take some precautions at the same exact time, but it's tough. And it's tough to get, a good quality podcast out of it. Even doing remote like this, it's so much easier to do it in person. But, this is temporary, but we'll all make the best of it.
Yeah, of course. And in some ways too, I have felt slightly liberated by the opportunity to have more people on in a digital space, because and I'm, in that same mindset where I do prefer to sit down in person with somebody so that we can bring something to the table that we could share and drink together. But I didn't want to sacrifice guests in 2020. I didn't want to sacrifice that opportunity to actually get to sit down with somebody, whether or not it was virtually like this or whatever. But yeah, I am very much looking forward to when we can actually go back to whatever the normal is that it will be.
I know the weird thing is like, who knows when that's actually going to be? I mean,
Yeah.
you've got this whole idea that like, okay, everybody gets vaccinated, but even if you get vaccinated, then it's still like you got to go out and still wear masks still. And it's just like, okay, like how much longer can this go on?
Yeah.
I know I'm one of those people, like I love live events and I love concerts and music festivals, and like some of them ones that I always look to in March every single year and May are already talking about cancellations, and I'm just like, oh, not again. Like, so it's just one of those things that I've told my wife this already. It's like I want this year of my life back, because once this all resets and I'm going, everything's up. If I got like allowance of like 2 music festivals a year, like I'm going to 5. Like I don't care.
I will say that once I think it was really when Bourbon and Beyond was canceled that things started to feel very real for me. And that was something that at that point the past couple of years I had been able to rely on it and go and get to meet people and talk with them and have just really cool experiences talking with people that I never thought I was going to be able to get to interview, and even just meeting new folks as well. And like as soon as that was stripped away from me, I, that truly was the moment where everything just set in, and I went, "This is going to take a while, isn't it?"
It's tough. It's definitely tough, and I can't speak for Fred, and I can't speak for Bourbon and Beyond, but I haven't heard anything that's like positive for this year either, because they only had one really good year, which was last year, and other than that, it was either like super hot or the rain out, and there was no really good middle ground. So I haven't heard anything that's like a positive or a negative. Who knows what's going to come out of it? But I agree. I mean, like that festival, at least for a lot of us in the bourbon scene, it was like the one time of the year like we felt like we were a little bit of an upper echelon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. It felt very very vindicating. We all felt like we were supposed to be in that space.
Yeah, we're just not some random podcasters. Like, we're like, oh, like they're taking us seriously now. I get it.
Why am I sitting down with Willie Nelson's granddaughter? Like, this is just this. None of this makes sense. I would like to welcome new subscriber to the show, Mancha Rice. Thank you so much for being here. I believe you're coming over from the Bourbon Pursuit crowd. So also thank you to anybody who is here for the first time on the show. Really appreciate you guys being here. I wanted to say too, I forgot to mention this before I brought Kenny in, because we are not yet over 1,000 subscribers here on the YouTube channel. We do not yet have super chats, but we do have a different system, which we call Snuffy Chats. It's basically the same thing. It's in support of our mascot back here, Mr. Snuffleupagus. And it's essentially the same thing, but it's on different platforms, PayPal, Venmo, or the Cash/Square app. All the links are below in the description, also at the bottom of your screen, so you can check all that out. Give you a shout out here on the show, of course, and it goes towards supporting the show. We really appreciate it. Joseph Brazo said, "I'm here for the first time." You're a liar, Joseph Brazo.
And I also want to say that, cheers to Perry and cheers to everybody else out there at Hustles. This is not an easy thing to do. And, I think all of us can always say, like, thank you so much to Patreon. Thank you to our supporters there, because that is the fuel that really keeps this engine going, because nobody realizes like selling advertisements isn't easy or fun. And a lot of times these companies would rather buy a billboard or a something at a bus stop, and you're just like, fuck, like we get to like thousands of people like that are like care about your whiskey, and you'd rather spend it on a bus stop. So
and what's funny too is that I'm in the process of a pretty significant project behind the scenes as well, which will in turn bring it's a podcast network. I'm working on a podcast network, and
Look at you, you're like trying to hold it back, like, it's a podcast network.
It's a podcast, and like
it's out of the bag. It's out of the bag now.
Yeah, it's not that I haven't talked about it, but it is a thing where it's like I don't want to get people too hyped because I'm still very much in the in the building everything up phase of it, and it will happen, but it's just taking time. But anyway, like the prospect of having to constantly be sending out emails and building relationships with brands, not even just whiskey related, but just the Mac Weldons of the world, the Purple mattresses of the world, and whatever.
Yeah, when they only want to pay you on like commissions and stuff, and let's be honest, like we're not here to sell mattresses. Like if we sell one, like cool, we might get like $100, but we're not gonna. That's not gonna take the time. That's not the ROI we're looking for.
Absolutely not. No, we'd rather show push people over to the Patreon, but regardless, patreon.com/mybourbonpodcast for as little as $1 a month. Anyway, so we brought you on to the show initially to talk about your all's newest release under the Pursuit series brand. That's Pursuit United. I wanted to give you a chance to introduce this product, and if you, of course, want to actually take a deeper dive into Pursuit spirits as well, I think that would be a good way to approach it. But yeah, floor is yours, man.
Sure. And I appreciate it. And thank you so much for your support. You got a bottle behind you. I've got one behind me, but I've also got one right here in my hand.
I imagine you've got a couple around the house.
Funny enough, we when we were actually starting, should I say, when we got our first dozen bottles to do like, media blast, like get it out there, like what can we do? We ended up with 2 bottles left, one for me and one for Ryan, who's my other co-host as well as part of Bourbon Pursuit. And we were like, oh shit, we need to go shopping. So we actually had to wait for Kentucky distribution to come because we didn't actually hold enough bottles back for ourselves. And so now at the same exact time, our broker, our bottler, everything's actually down in Memphis. And we were just there and we were like, hey, do you have the extra 12 bottles we told you to hang behind? Because, we're going to submit it to San Francisco and submit it to, all those things that, look good, the awards that look good on paper and stuff like that. And they're like, what are you talking about? We sent everything out. We're like, oh God. So it's like, we got to go. So we got to go and like clear out stores here in Louisville so we can actually buy our own bourbon back and have it for ourselves. Because we want to have something for release 1.
Oh, of course.
All right. So I'll rewind that a little bit. So Pursuit United, the name in itself, I mean, of course, United, what we did is we took 3 different distilleries from 3 different states, and we spent about a year on the project actually trying to blend them. Now, kind of rolling back even a little bit further, this was something that was a catalyst that started after we did the Pursuit series line. So our Pursuit series was actually how we started, and this is a single barrel type of offering that we had done for, we had almost 30 releases of it, of just single barrels that we go and we got to choose. And the Pursuit series is different because that's a single barrel offering, which is United, which is a small batch. But we got a really good opportunity with the Pursuit series with our broker because I'm sure that anybody that's really into bourbon, the way the bulk whiskey market works is if you want to start a brand, you say, okay, I'm going to need 100 or 150 barrels, and maybe they vary ranges, different states of distillation. There's different prices. There's everything that goes into it. And you're like, oh, okay, can I try it? She's like, sure. We'll send you a sample. That sample is representative of the lot. You write a check, and then 100 or 150 barrels show up, whatever you pay for. You don't know what the fill level of each barrel is. You don't know what each barrel tastes like. It's a huge gamble. Like that is one of the biggest gambles in starting your own whiskey brand, is buying on the bulk and source market, because you just don't know what's going to show up at the door. But our broker gave us a pretty unique opportunity. And he said, I've got, depending on the day, I got 2,000 to 5,000 barrels in the warehouse. You go and just choose whatever you want, and we'll figure out financing options for you. So we got a really unique opportunity to actually go and hedge against that, if you will, of actually selecting every single barrel.
Right.
So then we started going down this path and bottling up single barrels, and it's a pain in the ass. I mean, everything from labeling, because let's be honest, like a barrel, you get 150 to 180 bottles out of it. The minimum run for labels is 250. So we're already throwing labels away. And it's a pain in the ass. Like it's a pain in the ass to just bottle one single barrel and call it done. And our broker for a very long time said, you've got to do a small batch. Like you're killing us with all these. So
Sure.
the problem with doing the batching process, and the problem that we faced for quite a long time, was we're at the mercy of the sourced market. Like we've got to figure out like, well, what's out there that we can get. And that what we want to do is bring consistency. We don't want to come out with a small batch, do it one time and be like, okay, well, what's next? And I'll kind of get in that story of how all this happens. So the other part is we wanted to find something that got the price relatively low. I mean, we were buying anywhere between 9 to 14-year-old Tennessee bourbon barrels, and our lowest price we could get with any of those was like $75 or $80. But we wanted to get lower. And the problem with that is that you end up basically pricing yourself out if you start doing this, at a larger scale. So we wanted to find something that we had the ability to kind of like drive the price down. So you got to find barrels either with less age or anything like that. And there just wasn't anything on the market. Like, yeah, sure. There was like 3-year-old MGP, but we're like, we don't want to be another MGP. Like we got to do something different. There's just so much of it out there. I mean, don't be wrong. Like MGP is great. There's a lot of people that are building their labels on MGP, but we just feel it's just been done over and over and over again. It's an easy playbook to follow. You buy barrels, and put them in a bottle, and it's done. Like everybody knows what they're going to be getting with it. So we wanted to figure out, okay, how do we make this a little bit different? So our broker for the longest time, he kept sending us samples of different things. There's a lot of things like OZ Tyler's a big contract distiller that's out of Paducah. And he's like, here, try this. And it was like 2-year, 3-year. And we're like, oh, it's not ready yet. Like, it's like, I'm sorry, we can't do anything with this. And we don't want to sacrifice it. Like we know our audience. We don't want to sit there and put out some huge, youth bomb into it. And people are just like, what the hell are these guys? What are they doing? I thought they knew whiskey.
Kenny and Ryan lost their minds.
Yeah, pretty much. We had to make sure we didn't like really embarrass ourselves.
Yeah, of course.
So there's this, he was like, then he goes, hey, so I got some new samples in. It's a 4-year-old bourbon from Tennessee, but not from that place that you're thinking of Tullahoma. You should try it. And we're like, all right, great. Here we go again. Send us the samples. He sends us the samples and we get it. And I should have probably brought a sample bottle up, but I mean, it's super dark. It looked like it was like a 16-year-old whiskey, like how dark it was.
Sure.
And we tried it and we're like, this is amazing. Like this is actually super, super delicious. So now we have a base that we can work off of.
Right.
And so from there, we figured out like, well, we don't want to just come out with like one product or like one thing. Like, how do we brand that? And don't get us wrong, like we actually loved a lot of the Tennessee bourbon barrels that we did pick from Tullahoma, but it's an uphill battle. Like, don't get me wrong, there's a stigma that rhymes with pickle, and it's really hard to get over it. I mean, there's just a lot of people out there that don't want anything to do with it. So we had to figure out some way that's a different angle. We had a really good relationship with Finger Lakes Distilling up in New York. So we have done a few different Pursuit Series single barrels with them. And we had a few barrels of their wheated mash bill just kind of hanging out. So Ryan, and by the way, I should also mention that like Ryan is our quote unquote master blender. He doesn't like that, but he really is we have a funny relationship because we were both trying different blends at first, and mine always were terrible and his were better. And so I said, that's it. I'm out. Like you start doing the blends. Like I'm going to start working on spreadsheets. So I feel like I can do that one pretty good. So
Sugar Kitty said there's another stigma that rhymes with Blindstones.
Yeah, exactly. So we didn't want to go down that path. We want to find something different. And so we started off with this Tennessee bourbon, this 4-year-old stuff that was just like super dark, super rich, very oaky. And we're like, okay, this is a really, really good base. We can do something with this. So then we had Finger Lakes. So we started mixing a little bit of that, but we knew that we had to have a Kentucky component. Don't know what it is, but we had to have Kentucky. I mean, we're from Kentucky. It's anything you see on the shelves. Like if it doesn't say Kentucky, people are automatically going to start writing it off. So we knew we had to have that. So this goes back into the problem with the sourced market. So you look at the sourced market, like what's available. I already mentioned the OZ Tyler stuff. It's too young. We couldn't use it.
Yeah.
The other stuff, there's plenty of Barton on the market, right? 12-year-old Kentucky Barton.
Here and there.
Yeah, every once in a while. But you're running the same thing. Your pricing, the barrels get super, super expensive, and there is no definition, or there's no definite of, is this going to be there tomorrow?
Yeah.
So we're like, all right, well, we did a few blends with it. We're like, I just don't really know if we can nail this in. So then one of our brokers calls me and it's like, hey, I got some 6-year-old Kentucky barrels. They're from Bardstown. I'll let you all just kind of start rolling that. And they're very heavenly. And he says, start. And so we're like, hey, we'll take some samples of those. Ryan gets the samples on like a Thursday. He spends 2 days blending, trying different ratios. And he calls me over like Friday afternoon. We try it. I'm like, dude, this is it. Like, we nailed it. Like, let's get the ball rolling. He's like, all right, cool. Monday, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to send a message to our broker. Let's start off. We'll just buy like 4 barrels to make it nice and easy.
Right.
Monday comes around, sends a message. Broker's like, sorry, sold out. Like, they're gone.
Oh.
And we're like, dude, like, you just told these barrels came online like Wednesday last week. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. It's a huge roller coaster of emotions that go through this. And so we're like, oh crap, like, what do we do now? And Ryan really had a good idea, and he goes, you know what? Let me just like reach out to Bardstown Bourbon Company and see what they can do. And I was like, all right, sure, why not? And I'll tell you what, talking to them was probably the biggest breath of fresh air that we've ever had, because they were excited to work with us. And they were like, this sounds perfect. Like, we told them like our whole goal with this, and our goal that we all love as whiskey consumers is we love transparency. And our goal is to, and that's what we do. We say like, this has got, Bardstown Bourbon Company, it's got Finger Lakes, and it's got some other undisclosed distillery in Tennessee, not in Tullamore, we can't say because it's part of an NDA, but we try to be as transparent as we
make assumptions, I'm pretty sure. But
yeah. And so, like I said, we try to be as transparent as we can. And they love the story. They love that, because we try to tell them like, yes, like, we're going to bring you with us. Like, we're going to, try to help elevate and show your brand with us. So we really looked at this as not really just sourcing, but instead developing everything on top of partnerships. And that is really the key difference, because now establishing these partnerships, now starting to put new make down in a lot of these places, we're going to have a product that we can put out consistently, hopefully for, decades or more to come. And so we're super, super excited about doing that. So we ended up, Ryan messed with the blend again, probably another 2 to 3 months, just trying to perfect it and trying to figure out different ratios and all this other kind of stuff. And, we had to be conscious of like, okay, well, which ratio has more expensive barrels? What can we do this? And so it's a good balancing act. But we're very happy with the first release. We did 10 barrels in this blend, and it was probably the most nerve-wracking thing that we have actually gone through and done, because we just to give you kind of another inside little scoop of how this all went down.
Yeah, please.
So we put the first 10 barrels into the blending tank, and we weren't there. It's all at our brokerage in Memphis. We didn't really have anything to do with it. And so they put the blend in there, and I say, hey, can you all fill up a bottle and send it to me? Like, we need to start doing like product shots. Like, we got to get this out. Like, within the span of like 3 weeks, we had to get everything out. We had to get product shots. We had to get on the website. We had to do all this other kind of stuff. Basically just like a huge cram session.
I mean, at the very least, it's good that you had the label ready to go.
Yeah.
Because at that point, you're just like, well, it's going to look exactly the same. It's just whatever's going into the, which is the significant part of it, where you're like, maybe we should take a couple more weeks on it. But that is just hearing that the biggest portion of what was going to be that brand was a last minute call.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Yeah, it is. It's very stressful, and like I said, it somehow it all just kind of came together. But like I said, they did the blend, and they sent us a bottle back. We went and took the product shots, gave it to our designer who actually did our label and stuff like that. And we get the bottle back, and Ryan comes over. I'm like, all right, let's crack it. Let's see what this thing tastes like.
Yeah.
Because we opened it, we taste it, and on the first sniff, we're like, something's not right. This isn't right. We take a sip, and we're like, oh man, we just whiffed like really hard. Like, there's so much youth what the hell just happened? Like we were on cloud 9 and we went like below submarine level,
Sure.
like within the span of like a half a second. At that point, like I'm already doing damage control in my head. I'm like, how do we sell 2,000 bottles with something that we're not even proud of? Like, what do we
Yeah.
do here? And my wife can attest to this too. Like I was probably like the most depressed she's ever seen for like an entire week because I'm just like slumped over. I'm like, I don't feel like doing anything right now. We're just,
Yeah.
again, we're just not high on ourselves. And we're sitting there calling our broker. We're like, I don't know, man, this just isn't it. And they're tasting it. They're like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's pretty good. And we're like, no, it's not there. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. But again, hats off to my wife. She was like, listen, just wait until you get your final bottles back and maybe decide from there. Because Ryan and I, like, we sat there when we first cracked it, and I think we drank half to 3/4 of a bottle trying to convince ourselves that it's good. And we're just like, no, like, I guess this is okay. Like, it's okay. It's like our first attempt, right? Like
That can very easily go one of two ways. And I mean, there's no telling what the night's going to bring if you're just trying to convince yourself that something is good. There's no middle ground. You are either going to fully believe in something or you are going to detest it to your grave or to your hungover state the day after. But regardless,
yeah,
I mean,
no, and it's exactly what it was. I mean, like Ryan and I, even the next day, like we're still tasting it. And we're like, yeah, it's maybe we can. So anyway, like a week goes by and they get done bottling like all 2,200, 2,300 bottles. And
yeah,
I was like, okay, like I need you to ship me a dozen of them. Like I left a 12 bottle shipper down there and I was like, ship me a dozen. So they shipped me a dozen and it lands like 2 or 3 days later. I call Ryan. I'm like, hey, come on over. He's like, I can't come tomorrow. He's like, why don't you just open it up and just let me know how it is? And I was like, I can't do that, man. We got to do this together. Like
yeah,
I'm
of
not
course.
gonna do that.
Yeah.
So he comes over the next day and we crack it open, we pour it, sniff it, and it's just like this. And we're like, holy shit, like we did it. Like this is exactly what it's supposed to be. Like this is almost better than what we had in the blend. I mean, here's the thing. It might just been naive. It might have just been dumb luck, whatever it is. Like it's hard to take something from 100 ml blend and scale that up to something that's 10 53-gallon barrels plus
Absolutely.
water that you have no control over.
Yeah.
And so it was a big, I mean, we went from like, I mean, it was, like I said, roller coaster. Like we were just like the happiest people you've ever seen. Like we're sitting there, like we're, jumping high fives. Like it would have looked like it was, out of like Zoolander or something. Like we're all just like jumping up and everything. Like, calling friends over, like, you got to come try this. It's amazing. And so
Come on, my grandma.
Yeah. I know you don't drink whiskey. Get over here. We're shoving it in your mouth. So anyway, yeah, I mean, like I said, we tried it and we're like, that's it. Like we did it. Like we can't wait to do this. And that's what kind of gave us the ambition that said, like, we've got something here. Like, let's start scaling it up. And so now we've kind of got a lot of the wheels in motion right now to really take this to a larger scale brand here.
Yeah.
Not like 2026, but it'll be there.
I want to touch on that here in just a second, especially about the development of the brand. I got a couple of snuffy chats to give shout outs to. First off, Mr. Matthew Porter, the world's top whiskey taster, of course, from the Bardstown Bourbon Company, who was also giving BBC a big plug as well. And I definitely want to make sure that we touch on them in a slightly different sense here in a bit, but that's something that I want us to make sure we talk about. And from Brian Brennicky as well, drinking some of my favorite Pursuit, episode 10, out of his TIMBP glass. How's that for being on theme? Well, we actually have some of the episode 10 lined up as well to go. So save some of that there, Brian. But so there's a couple of things that I want to touch on with you, and I think that we can start a little bit more introspectively, and that's in terms of the development of the brand of Pursuit series. You spent a significant amount of time, and if this is not inside baseball, I don't know what it is, but you've spent a significant amount of time interviewing people about sourcing bourbon, sourcing whiskeys, right? At what point did you and Ryan kind of stop and look at each other and go, this is something we could do? And what was the driving catalyst to where you not only were saying this is something we could do, but this is something we should do?
So we actually had to like pinch ourselves a little bit last week because we were on this like another roller coaster of emotions, of real highs of doing things for this particular brand. And talking to Ryan, Ryan is very much he's a very, as you mentioned, very introspective. He's like a very meditative person, really thinks things, and more appreciative. I'm like analytical, like I'm looking at numbers and blah blah blah. And Ryan put it really well in saying that this is all just a coincidence of just tiny chances. So the way that even Pursuit Spirits and Pursuit Series really got started was because we had a roundtable podcast, and we were talking about this brand called Doc 52s at the time. It's this liquor store inside of Memphis that started their own brand, or house brand, and we kind of use that as a topic because that's something that's not unique. I mean, that's something that's been around for ages, where grocery chains and everything else, they would have their own private labels, and this was kind of like a resurgence of that. So we talked about it on the podcast, and about a week later, I get this phone call from a guy, and he's like, "Hey, I helped build that brand. Would you be interested in doing your own?" And we're like, never really thought about it, but tell me more. And that's kind of like how we got hooked into it, and like how that story began about, saying like, go select your own barrels. So even that actually wasn't going to be it might have never actually seen the light of day. Because what happened is he dropped off some barrel samples for us, because when he said like, oh, the only age stock we really have is Tennessee whiskey or Tennessee bourbon. We're like, nah, we're out. Like, we're Kentucky boys. Like, nah, we're not even going to mess with it. So just go ahead and, kick rocks. And he's like, listen, I'll be up in Louisville in a few weeks. I'll bring you some barrel samples. You can try them. If you don't like them, fine. We'll go our separate ways. But, let's just see what happens. So he brought us some barrel samples, and, he said like, cheers, appreciate it. Like, we'll let you know. Ryan, my other co-host, he came over, and that was the year that Henry McKenna won, best bourbon whiskey, or best bourbon, even best whiskey in the world. I think what it was, whenever Fred ruined Henry McKenna for everybody. and I said, okay, let's get Henry McKenna out. I was like, if any one of these samples are better than Henry McKenna, we'll do this. And it might have been probably the second barrel sample that we tried. And we were like, oh shit, like this is actually really good. And so we're like, I guess we're going to do this. and so, we messaged him. We're like, whatever this barrel sample, I don't remember what the ID laser code or whatever it was. I was like, save that. Like, we're going to hold on that barrel. We're going to release that. And that actually ended up being episode 1 of Pursuit Series. So that's kind of like how it all began. And so it's pretty interesting again, it's a tiny, just little bit of consequences and just lucky breaks. I think that anybody that's, gets to where they are, they think it's there's a lot of luck involved and just a lot of chance. And we just happen to be at the right place at the right time, talking about the right thing, and the right person heard it. And from there, it's just kind of been snowballing and just growing bigger and bigger since then.
Donnie the Linux Cat asked, are you talking about Docs or Blue Note, or both? He's in Memphis and drinks both of them.
Yes. So Blue Note, the people behind that, like, that's our broker and stuff like that. So very good people, very good whiskey as well. So we were actually basically selecting single barrels for Pursuit Series out of a lot of their stock. So that's kind of like how that generation all came. But it was Doc 52s. Like, Doc 52s was doing the same exact thing we were doing, but they were doing it for their local store. But they were also dipping it in like 14 layers of wax, which we were never going to do. So
it's a pain in and of itself.
Yeah. It wasn't even like good wax either. It's like you had to get like a butcher knife and like hack it all off.
Paul Clark asked, will each batch be identified by proof, batch 1 at 108, or do you plan to have future batches at 108 proof? or aiming for a certain profile, whatever the proof, or just whatever is tasty?
So when we started doing this, like we knew that doing the Pursuit series, like this is a pain in the ass. This is a pain in the ass to handwrite everything, whether it's going to be batch numbers, whether you change proofs, whether you do anything. So we are going to try to be like as consistent can possibly get with this. So
Sure.
you are looking and tasting what this product should be tasting like for the next 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, whatever it's going to be. So always shooting, and probably should be 108 proof, and the same flavor profile, the same distilleries, the same blend, everything like that. So we are, and even coming back to that a little bit, we start talking to these distilleries about doing new make contracts, and they're all like, "Oh yeah, like you should do your own custom mash bill. Like you can do this much and this much." We're like, "No, listen, like no." We're not distillers. We don't want to be. We don't want to be
Yeah, of
distillers. Like
course.
you have a good product here, just recreate that, and we'll just do the blend, like, because that's really where we create something that's
Yeah,
different there. So yeah.
absolutely. Um, Emily, I apologize. I do pronounce Linux as Linux. I don't know why I do that, but real quick, Jason from the Mash and Drum with the next Snuffy chat. He said, "Cheers to you and Kenny." Cheers to you, buddy. Appreciate you. It's always good seeing Jason in here. So I have gone ahead and poured some of episode 1 because I figured why not? We're on the topic of it. I am actually going to go ahead and pour a little bit of episode 2 because it's been a really long time since I've had either of these. And I'm sure
Me too.
I was going to say it's probably been a while for you as well.
You got to understand, like I've only got, I think, like maybe 1 or 2 more bottles of. I know I only have 1 sealed bottle of 2 left, and that's it.
Wow.
And then I think I only have 1 or 2 left of 1, and then yeah. So I've been nursing these ever since they were open.
I don't blame you. What are your this is off topic slightly, but what are your daily drinkers?
Oh gosh, I think that's one of the toughest questions you get, and I'm sure you get it too.
Oh, I get it all the time. Yeah,
I know, and you don't want to give like the same bullshit answer of like, oh, well, I can't choose a favorite kid, and we do that often, but to be fair, like I think I've gotten to the point now where I have not refined my palate, but I know what I want. Like if I go downstairs and I'm like, I know I'm in the mood for something, like I know I'm in the mood for something that's a Four Roses, or I know I'm in the mood for something that is a Heaven Hill profile, or I know I want something that's like super chocolatey, and I'll reach for a malted, really heavy malted barley whiskey, like Chattanooga whiskey or something like that. Like at this point, like I know either it's what I ate or what I'm sitting at the bar and I'm looking at, like, yeah, that's what I'm in the mood for.
Yeah.
I don't really have like something, and that's probably one of the toughest things of like, all right, what's your daily drinker? I'm like, I don't have a daily drinker. Like, I got like 150 open bottles in my bar downstairs. Like, it's just,
of course,
whatever I feel like grabbing at the moment.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest thing is people want a good answer out of you, and you're like, sorry, I can't have it. But now I can say, well, of course, it's Pursuit United. Like that's my favorite daily drinker.
There you go. There you go. I think that's one of the things that's so nice about this product too, is how approachable it is in terms of proof. I mean, 108's not going to knock you on your butt, but it's also going to, I mean, we drink alcohol for a specific reason, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we have to acknowledge the fact that consumption of alcohol is, there is a feeling that we all look for when we have a drink.
You're doing a very good job of tap dancing around it. Yes.
Well, I am, but the point being, like, you don't want too much, you don't want too little. And I think that when you look at the Turkey 101s of the world, the Grandad 114s, put in a product at 108, and I guess it's in some regards as well, Antique 107, which basically doesn't exist anymore in this market. But all of them kind of have this connotation of approachable, but with just a little bit something extra to, you don't have to work so hard for it, I guess.
Yeah, I'll kind of give you a little bit of history of like how we landed on 108 as well.
Please do. That was actually where I was going with that.
Yeah, I mean, we knew going to this, like as bourbon drinkers ourselves, as really whiskey enthusiasts, we knew that we had at least be over 100. because that is kind of like my threshold where I feel like I really enjoy this whiskey. Don't get me wrong,
Absolutely.
like there's every once in a while, you get a good Buffalo Trace barrel or something like that. But I mean that I think somebody put in the comments like it drinks quick, it drinks like water. Like you're never like, ooh, that's got a very long like spice back finish. Like it's always, it hangs around and lingers. And it doesn't really linger. And but we knew we wanted to be a little bit higher. And I was like, well, we don't want to do 107. We want to look like copycats. But I was like, what if we did 108? Like, we just went, one more up the Richter scale here. And Ryan, we actually had one of the final blends done, and Ryan is actually really good friends with Drew Colesveen over at Willett, and he says he goes, hey, can you go and proof this? He's got one of those machines. You just stick it in and do it real quick, and he's like, just drop them off the sample. He's like, just text me whatever it is, and because we knew at this point, like we had the blend, like this is what we're gonna go for, and he sent the picture back of what it was. It was 108, and we're like. like we had planned it, it was like one of the most like unreal things ever. We're like, that's it, it's 108, and that's what we're gonna do. So
it's a message if I've ever heard one.
Yeah. I mean, because in 108, and I feel like I'm right there with you too. I feel like it's such a good proof because it gives you a lot more flavor, a lot more characteristic. It's not as much water going into it. But at the same exact time, like the goal with United wasn't meant to just appeal only to whiskey connoisseurs and consumers that are like, oh yeah, give me the Bookers at 128 proof. Like we're not appealing to that. Like we're trying to reach a much broader mass market with this, and knowing that people even in the mass market love Weller 107 because that is a particular whiskey that is still yet approachable, but has a lot more flavor and balance going on to it. We're like, we think that that's a pretty good number to be at because we can still appeal to, the whiskey enthusiast, but we can also still appeal to a mass market at the same exact time.
So I'll give a little bit of backstory as to how I came to be in possession of a bottle of Pursuit United as well. So you had shared a review. I can't even remember who it was through. It might have been Paste Magazine, which in and of itself is ridiculously cool. And like that would have been a moment for me where I'd have been like, I'm feeling pretty good about this. I can kind of,
I was about to say, we've actually got a lot of good reviews about it, and we haven't paid anybody for those. So anybody that thinks we're paying people, it's not true. It's we hopefully the whiskey speaks for itself. But don't be wrong. Like I targeted people like Jim at Pace Magazine, and
of course,
so I was just like, "What do you think, man? Do you think you'll do this?"
So, you posted that article or shared that article, and I just made a comment on it, and I was like, "I've really got to get a bottle of this." And Brian Sipping Corn sent me a message, and he was like, "Hey, I'll send you a bottle from Sealbox," and I was like, you don't have to do that, but I really, really appreciate it. And he was like, it's no problem. Just send me your address. And sure enough, in like 2 days, it was on my front porch. I was like, you have got to be kidding me. This is just one of the, like, I'll attest. And I know Clifton from Bourbon Bites can as well to the quality of Sealbox in terms of being a distributor. Phenomenal. Absolutely great customer service. Never had an issue with shipping from them.
Cross your fingers.
I don't want to jinx anything. Knock on wood or whatever I can. But so I got this bottle, and I think it was this past weekend. We were over at my parents' house, and my dad, who's in the chat as well, Papa Ritter, is hopping around in here somewhere. He's also an avid bourbon drinker, and I was like, I haven't opened this yet. Do you want to try it? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. And so we cracked it, and I am known for, to put it nicely, oversharing in some regards. We're like, if I get really excited about a bottle or just multiple bottles, I'll bring them over to his house, and I'll say, you need to try this, that, and the other. And I think that was the last thing that we had that night. And we both just kind of stopped and looked at each other, and we're like, whatever we were expecting from this product, it's absolutely blown it out of the water. And truthfully, and I promise you, and I promise everybody in the chat too, I'm not trying to blow smoke. I was genuinely so pleased with this on the first sip. And I will also say, from the limited experience that I have had with Pursuit series episodes, majority has been hits for me. Every now and then I've had one where I've been like, this isn't what I would prefer, but I can understand why other people would be so.
It's okay.
Inclined.
That's the dynamic of single barrels. So
single barrels, exactly. But I just had this moment with the United where I just felt so. It felt really comfortable, if that makes sense. Like,
that should be our next tagline. It just feels so comfortable.
It feels comfortable. It's
like an old suburban
It's like going home to mom and dad's and sleeping in your own bed. But it feels accessible. It feels welcoming, and truthfully, yeah, it does feel comfortable. Like that. There's something about it where, even though you feel like you're going back to something that you've had before, in of itself, it is a very unique product. And I think one of the things that has kind of helped shape it, and this has been something that I've kind of thought through as we've been talking too, is the fact that it's a 4-grain. I mean, it's got a wheated bourbon as part of its, overall components. What I need to find the right way to phrase this. Was there ever a moment where, and I know that you guys said that you said that you all had a really good relationship with Finger Lakes, of course, but was a 4-grain ever something that you kind of said, we should really think about doing this with a blend? Or, even if we don't do it now, we should probably think about doing it in the future?
Honestly, now that you say it, you're kind of taking me by surprise, because we never ever thought, and honestly, I never really thought of actually being a 4-grain until you just said it. Because here's the thing, when you look at like E.H. Taylor 4-grain, and you look at other 4-grain bourbons that are on the market, there's not a lot of them that people are like, oh, Jesus, this is the best thing I've ever had. Like,
well, yeah, but it was all a precedent that was basically set by Taylor 4-grain.
Yeah.
Right. And everybody's just, trying to catch that high.
Exactly. And I always said, I mean, literally, I am on record on a lot of podcasts always saying, like, if Buffalo Trace and other distilleries found out that creating 4-grain whiskey was better than doing 3-grain whiskey, then they would have been doing that since the very beginning. I've always been like against like the whole like, distilling 4-grain theory. No, I mean, when we were coming up with this blend and Ryan was really going at it, we just had to look at our inventory and see what we had. And we really loved, especially that episode 10, like that was some of the initial stuff that we were starting to blend with, was that particular product. And there's just something about the Finger Lakes product, especially in the wheated mash bill, that just has these fruit notes in it that you can't get off of anything else. And it's super not fruit punchy, but like a bubble gum, and like just all this other kind of stuff that you're like, oh man, like this is super different. And in all transparency, that's actually like the lowest percentage that we have in the blend is actually Finger Lakes. So
I believe that.
It's like a little bit goes a long way with it. So we have the strong oak influence that comes from the Tennessee stuff, and then you've got the typical Kentucky profile from Bardstown Bourbon Company. Like, there's nothing super. Don't get me wrong. Like, I love what they're doing, but there's nothing that stands out that you're like, oh yes, you get like this and this, and like, it's caramel, it's maple, it's vanilla, it's it's the typical Kentucky profile. But somehow, like, just mixing these together, they were just kind of like highlighting just some of the uniquenesses that each one brings to the table with it. So again, a lot of it's just luck at the same exact time too. And the thing is, like, if we didn't have barrels of Finger Lakes sitting around to play with, it might not have been a part of this blend. So
Yeah.
it's just been a, like I said, just chance and luck and just seeing what's available to us.
You know what's funny too, and to continue the conversation about Finger Lakes, and then I would like to also come back around to sourcing, just kind of in general. But when I first had Series 10, Episode 10, I was like, this is one of the best single barrels I've ever had. I mean, just hands down. I was like, this is incredible. With the few that I had from the first dozen of Pursuit series as well, I felt like it was the shining star, personally.
Mhm.
And I just pour some more of that as well. But um, I definitely see where you're talking about, that weeder being what kind of brightens it up and introduces those fruity notes as well. But I do think as well that um, it helps kind of bring a more balance to the overall product of Pursuit United. And I again commend you guys for doing such an awesome job with that. I want to touch on this as well, because I think that it's important right now to discuss sourcing, and especially for you guys, because you are so in the thick of it. You're so in the weeds to some degree. We keep seeing pockets jumping around from sourcing. For a long time, it was MGP. Still, to a very significant degree, it's MGP.
Yeah, I was like,
Barton
that's
from
not going anywhere for
no, no,
at
no, no.
least. Yeah.
It's not at all. But it's starting to be met with competitors as well. Um, Barton is doing, as we were saying, a lot of contract distilling. Bardstown Bourbon Company, for sure, is doing plenty of that. And then the third or fourth, rather, unnamed distillery that is in Tennessee, of course.
Oh, there's a lot more out there. Yeah, I mean, it's just there's a whole other world when you get into it, and you start finding all this stuff that's out there, and sometimes the broker's your best friend and your worst enemy at the same exact time.
Yeah. Ed, do you ever look at the field and get a little bit overwhelmed by it? Because I would. And also, I want to extend this question as well. Do you think that this is the period where we're going to start seeing some of the most unique blends and single barrels coming out of bourbon? Because now, with the opportunity to go to a distillery and say, I want a mash bill that looks like this, at this toast, at this char, aged this long, comes off the still at this. Are we going to see a break from what a lot of people would kind of consider standard bourbon profiles? And what does that, this is a loaded question, I apologize. But but from your vantage point as well, what does that mean for the future, in at least for the bourbon boom, or for bourbon as a product itself?
Yeah, I'll try to break that down in a few different ways. So
Yeah, and again, I apologize that it was so many different layers, but
no, absolutely. Like I said, I'll try to break that down a few different ways. So, like, one of the things that you had mentioned is like, coming off the still, selecting my char level, doing all this stuff. Like the contract distillation. I mean, it's like Chipotle for whiskey. You get to go through and pick every single little thing, but there's
yeah,
not a whole lot of people that are doing particularly just that. You've got your Bardstown Bourbon companies, and there's a few other small pockets out there that will do that standard, contract distillation, but Castle and Key, like all that sort of stuff. But you got to know what you want going into it,
oh, of
and
course,
that has been something, at least on our side, that we're just like, dude, we are going to stay so far away from that because we didn't go to school for that. Like, we don't know what mass rules we want. Like, we know what the end product is, and that is me. Like, I love analyzing a risk and seeing what you can and can't do. And I was like, if I know what this product's like at 4 years, like, why would I want to go and mess it up like 4 years in the future? Like,
sure.
let's stick with what I know is going to work.
Yeah,
So I'm a little bit different in that aspect. You know, I feel like we're very unique in the fact that we are not the first people to come out with a a blended straight bourbon whiskey of, selecting stuff from different distilleries. Like Barrel has been doing it for a very, very long time. Every single one of their batches is very unique, but they're doing a little bit different because they are looking at the sourced market and they are buying what's available and then blending it. And then once it's out, it's out. Like you can't replenish it.
Right.
So are you going to see this become something that's more mainstay or going? I don't know. It's really, really hard to tell because I think you're going to go basically one of three routes. One, you're either going to go the full contract distillation route. You know what you're getting, you know what you want, and that's just going to be your product. So whether you're going to Bourbon Bourbon Company or whether you're buying 36% MGP rye and that's just going to be your thing, that's what it is. Or whether you're blending, two mash bills from MGP and thinking you're very cunning, that's just what it is. Like, so that's one side of it. The other side is you've got the people like Barrel. You source what's available, you come out with blends, or you're trying to source stuff and trying to keep it consistent, and that is going to be the hardest part. I mean, there's companies out there today that are doing, and don't get me wrong, like MGP 95.5 rye. That's a great rye. There's nothing wrong with it at all. Everybody's doing it. 90% of the rye you see on the shelf is exactly that.
Yep.
But, they're trying to blend the older rye with the newer rye. But that older rye, that stock will run out. Like it will run out, or you're going to start paying, exorbitant amounts, and you're going to start having to either raise your price upstream or something like that. So again, that's another route that's going to be very, very hard. And then there's our route. I feel that we're unique a little bit. We're not the only ones that are doing this. I mean, you've got, like there's like Fistful of Bourbon. There's a few other ones that are out there, but that's a little bit different. Like they're taking like 5 different ones that are already in like one family portfolio, whether it's, I forget, it was like Pernod Ricard or something like that. And so they're trying to do something unique. There's some other bespoke ones that are out there that, are a little bit smaller than we are as well. So I feel like we're a little bit unique. Are we going to find more of this? I don't know. I think, I feel that I don't know if there's a lot of people that are going to go our route, because what we did is it's kind of risky, but we also have really good relationships, good partnerships. And don't be wrong, like we are so fortunate that we're actually able to get into Bardstown Bourbon Company. Like I know that other people have talked to them and they're like, wait, what do you mean you got in? Like they said that there's a 3-year waiting list until they can do new make contract runs. I was like, yeah, but you're not Bourbon Pursuit. So and so, I mean, like I said, we're very fortunate that we can do that. So it's just going to be, a little bit different of where you want to go and how you're going to do it.
I'd say that was a light flex, but that is not a light flex.
I mean,
that is just laying it all out on the table.
It's true. I mean, it is fun. I mean, but like I said, it's a little bit different. Like we can, not only we're still paying the same retail price that everybody else would pay to BBC, but we're also doing marketing for them, like free marketing. So
of course, absolutely.
They kind of see the value in what we bring, and that's what we're always trying to find this. And Ryan's the best one that says it. Like anybody that we work with, we're just trying to find win-wins. Like it's got to work for you, it's got to work for us. Like let's find that happy medium ground.
So we are getting, we're basically over the top of the hour at this point, but we haven't quite been going for a full hour. So I do want to go ahead and start wrapping this up just a little bit, but I got to know, and I'm sure everybody else is interested to know as well. Have you guys started working on Pursuit United Batch 2 yet?
So that is already actually in process. We have the Finger Lakes barrels acquired. We're actually meeting with BBC next week to sign some contracts and then also get the next barrels. And then we're waiting for our next Tennessee barrels to come in. We had originally put in our press release that the next batch of, because this was only 2,250 bottles that came out. The next batch would be 4 times the size. And we had put that it's going to come out in March, but we had a little bit of a delay. So it might be like April or May, but hey, it'll just keep people thirsty for more when it actually does come out. But to give you also maybe even a little bit more transparency than we should be doing, we've already started working on initial partnerships for Pursuit United Rye. So we're going to start working, and it's gonna be a little bit different. We haven't really nailed it or final down or anything like that. We're at the super, super early stages, but working to try and kind of do a Maryland, Kentucky handshake, if you will, like
Nice.
two powerhouses of rye and kind of bringing them together. So it's going to be
Goodness.
something super unique and a little bit different. So super excited to do that. And another thing that we've also done is, so we took the 10 barrels that we had dumped for Pursuit United, and we had bought 10 drums of rum from our broker when we were down there. And so we actually dumped rum back in the United barrels. We don't know what we're going to do with it yet. It was funny. We thought about doing a Pursuit United rum, and I was on the way back talking to Ryan. I was like, is it really United if it's the same exact rum? Like it's just Venezuelan rum. And granted, it's good, but it's not United, is it? And he's like,
Yeah, right.
no,
right.
we united it with the United barrels. I was like, dude, you're trying to stretch it. Like,
Yeah, too much.
So
there.
yeah, we'll see what's gonna happen. We have no plans for that, but
Sure.
or should I say, we have plans. We just don't know what it's gonna be, and it's only been resting in those barrels for I think like 30 or 45 days, but we'll give it like 6 months, maybe a year, and see what comes of it. And yeah, I mean, like I said, just having fun with it right now. And just to kind of give you an idea is, like I said, we're trying to scale this as much as we possibly can. So our goal for the next 4 years is to put out at least 10,000 bottles a year of it.
Nice.
We'll see what that's going to be. As soon as our new make actually comes of age and we're ready to bottle it, year 2026, we're going to be looking at scaling this to about 90,000 bottles and starting to cover a lot of states. And it's funny, like we say 90,000, that's actually very, very small in comparison to like anything else.
Sure.
Like if you think of like what a George T. Stagg release every year, it's like 40,000 bottles and you never see one. Like that gives you like an example of like 90,000 is really not that much in comparison. So
that is fair. Regardless, I think that it's just so cool to see the brand that you guys have built, even looking at that opportunity and that possibility. So kudos to you guys. Again, Pursuit United is a really, really fantastic product. I hope everybody goes out. I'm also not, I should probably say, I'm not being paid by Bourbon Pursuit to say any of this. Your
Venmo is on there, right? So
yeah, I asked Kenny to be on the show. He agreed and all that. Fred did ask, when is Perry going to be on Bourbon Pursuit?
Yeah, we'll find a time. We'll make it happen. We'll do one of these. We'll do some live streams or something. We'll make this a regular occurrence. Who knows?
Yeah, that sounds great to me. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and hop off here for the night. Thank you all so much for watching. Kenny, thank you so much for being a part of this tonight. It's been a lot of fun getting to chat with you, my friend.
I appreciate it. And thank you again for having me on. And thank you everybody that is supporting us through Pursuit Spirits and buying a bottle. I really hope you enjoy it. And we will hopefully just keep cranking out as much as we can. It's delicious stuff. And just to even put a warning out there, we sent 690 bottles to Sealbox, and we're down to 140 remaining. So,
oh my gosh,
just to let you know, it's going relatively quickly.
And people can find you all at Bourbon Pursuit on social media, correct?
At Bourbon Pursuit on all the socials. And then, of course, if you want to see what's going on with the brand, at Pursuit Spirits everywhere there too.
Perfect. And if you want to follow the show itself, it's at My Bourbon Pod on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I am at pritter1492 on all social media channels. If you have not yet, go and subscribe to the podcast. This is My Bourbon Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, if you're here because of Bourbon Pursuit, you already know where you're getting your podcast from. I don't have to tell you how to do that. It's just easy. Just go and search for it. And patreon.com/MyBourbonPodcast for as little as $1 a month. You can help support the show. That does it for this week's edition of TIMBP Live. We'll see you all next week. Once again, Kenny, thank you so much for being here. We'll see you guys real soon. But until then, I'm Perry. And this is TIMBP Live.
Cheers.